Hey guys, on today's Human Renovation Project vlog, I'm really excited to introduce a good friend of mine, anxiety expert, podcast host, author, Dr. John Duffy. Doc, I'm bringing you into this because A, we're good friends, and B, anxiety has become such a common thing, and it's becoming a problem for younger and younger kids.
It is.
As well as, folks like us.
Yep, it's true. Anxiety is increasingly prevalent an issue in our culture. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we are just inundated with information, and we expect ourselves to be something close to perfect.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
And for kids, what advice can you give for parents watching, to deal with when it's like level 10?
Yeah.
And you're getting to level 10 too, and all of a sudden the whole house is at level 10. How do you bring it down?
You describe it perfectly, because the anxiety is in the space, right? And you know this better than anybody, right?
Energy.
Because, the energy and the anxiety is in the space. So as parents, we need to model bringing it down. So we can't meet our kids up here. We need to be down here.
Right.
And our kids will eventually learn through our modeling to meet us where we are, instead of us meeting them where they are, all elevated and anxious.
But we can't do that unless we're in that place.
We have to work on ourselves first. We have to manage our anxiety. We'll never do away with it. I think we all suffer to some degree from anxiety.
Yeah.
But if we can just manage it, if we understand it and we know it, then we can control it, especially with our kids.
So, from what I've read, what your and I conversations, fight or flight, an instinct that we were born with.
Yeah.
That was relevant when we were running away from dinosaurs as cavemen.
Correct.
But today, it's still there and sometimes manifests in different ways, correct?
Yes.
And thus, potentially, the biggest problem we have.
In my estimation, yes. Our minds are trained to be very frightened, to be in crisis mode. And if you think about life, there are very few crises in our lives. So if you can really wrap your brain around that, I have a situation here, not a crisis, I just have to manage the situation.
Yeah.
But if you're in crisis mode, you barely have a chance to make it through without panicking.
Yeah.
Now,
what you did there was interesting because it seems like it's part of neuro-linguistic programming. You changed the word association from crisis to a situation.
Oh, it's huge, right? NLP is invaluable when it comes to managing anxiety, because the words we use in our mind drive the feeling.
But what about a rapid deprogramming? Is there such a thing that exists? Because you see guys like Anthony Robbins do it, and experts like him, and they do it he has an ability to just penetrate through somebody, and get to them. Is it lasting? I don't know. From what I hear is people leave those seminars and then 3 weeks later they're feeling that loss of that feeling, that vibrance in those moments. How do you sustain even when you do break through?
Okay, so that's a great question, because everybody wants a quick fix. I think you can have one. If you do that quick NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, hard reset, this is what I call what Anthony Robbins does, a hard reset, and you shift the language that you tell yourself in your mind, it takes a little courage, because you have to identify what that is. And usually that's something negative about yourself. It's a lack of faith in your capacity to do something, and the way you look, the way you feel about yourself, something. And if you can identify that, turn that on its head 180 degrees and say, no, I'm not lacking anything. I have everything I need. If you can shift that internal monologue, you can do a hard reset, and that can sustain itself. But you have to be as tenacious as anxiety is. And that's tenacious, man.
That's a great statement. And this is you hear that and you're like, let's do that. And then all of a sudden life happens, and you go home and your kid's screaming, and you're losing your job, and money's tight, so on and so forth.
Right.
What tools can you give in an instant to say, all right, that's going to happen, but do this, immediately do this.
Yeah.
Like Anthony Robbins says, put music on and scream and do things that are take you out of that norm. Do you agree?
I actually do agree. Anything that takes you out of that crisis mode works, and sometimes it's very meditative and quiet. Some people can work with that, breathe in deeply. A lot of us feel like, I can't do that. And that's where I love what Robbins does, because screaming, running, just moving sometimes is gets you out of that mode where you're frozen.
Right. Change the physical side of it.
Yeah.
Is it easier as a kid who doesn't have the programming yet to deal with anxiety versus an educated adult who can rationalize Like let's talk about that.
That's a great question, Frank, because there is a substantial difference. I work with a lot of young people, a fair number of people in my age group. As time goes on, it's harder, it's doable, but working with children, teenage kids, they're malleable. They can shift their thinking pretty readily, pretty quickly, and hold it. For us, we're so deeply ingrained in habitual thinking. We get these ruts in our brain, if you can kind of picture that, and it is hard to dig out of those ruts.
Oh, I know. And it's interesting to say you did, because the parallel with the Human Renovation Project is all about, my life transforming spaces and renovating old homes and, giving them a new lease on life is very similar to what you do with the human mind.
Yeah.
Is renovating that mindset and that programming to really dig out, the like you said, the roots that aren't working.
Right.
That's a huge challenge, man. Like I feel like it's easier for me to knock a foundation down and rebuild it versus, really digging into someone's psyche.
I think the analogy is an apt one. I mean, oftentimes I use this Fontana thinking in my mind, where I think like, okay, start with the foundation. What does this person feel about themselves? Where's all the garbage that we can get rid of?
Yeah.
Down in the basement, and then we can start working our way up to, the spaces where we live in our brains, what I mean? But first, there's this like the past, this feeling that we got when we were children about ourselves, any kind of parenting issues that we have to do away with and eliminate. So that's the first thing you want to manage. You don't want to spend a lifetime, just like a basement, you don't want to spend a lifetime at it.
Sure.
You want to work your way up pretty quickly.
Right. So as we climb up to that first level, and you've analyzed and located the issues, the cracks in the foundation, and you start to fill those. What are some of the things people out there who haven't done the work yet? And this is really geared towards you guys, who know that you have an issue, know that you want to tackle a problem. What is some ways that they could start filling those cracks safely to get to the first level? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Safely is the right question, because when you're doing this internal work, it threatens your safety a little bit. It makes you feel, because even if you're used to feeling awful about yourself, it's familiar,
right?
And you know it,
right?
It's
safe for you,
it's
even though it's awful.
Right, so it takes a lot of bravery to step outside of that and say, you know what, I'm done living this way. I'm done thinking this way about myself, my world, the future. So I'm going to make strides to shift that. That's filling in those cracks in the foundation. And once you decide that, then you feel stronger. You feel like your foundation is stronger, and you can work your way up. But not until then, until you're willing to take that step. And there's a little bit of a jump to it. There's a little bit of a leap of faith element to this. It's not, right? Yeah, you have to have that feeling of going for it, because it is a little threat to safety. It isn't perfectly safe to say, I'm going to change my life. I can say this with authority, having done this for about 25 years. I've yet to work with anybody who was disappointed in taking that jump.
That's it, folks. Do the work.